first off, this all wouldn't be possible without the help of the sponsors for both iColorist and the Colorist Society. So it's a great chance to just involve those. Thank you, Kevin. On cue there to these guys who have supported us. There you go. Kevin's just shot off there. And they've obviously supported us through these last nearly 2 years, really, where things have been difficult, ups and downs for everybody, as we all know. Now, hey, Kevin, you and I are just waffling away, and there's 2,000 people already joined this mix-up.
Well, that's all right. Hey, we better say hello to everybody then.
The beard's looking good, buddy.
I think it's the Back to the Future haircut that I really like.
I like the tiara.
Hey, all.
How are you? Hey.
Yeah, I was going to wear a Plague Doctor Raven mask, but it didn't. It kind of hurt. So this was the next best thing.
This is my latest assistant. Most of our clients run away though, so it's not working out. We've had to bury a few, if you don't pay your bills.
It's 3 a.m. here.
That's what I thought. Well done. Hats off for you to join in at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's already on my third cup of coffee, so hopefully can still be awake.
So we're both CSI. You obviously were instrumental in founding the organization and getting it up and running, getting it started, which was probably 5 years ago now, would it be?
16, yeah, 5 years.
16?
Yeah, 5 years. And this is actually, well, we're kind of on schedule because there was something that we always wanted to do at the beginning that we needed to kind of build up a strong structure and foundation. Because it's very important that the society is continuous and it lasts through multiple generations. So the first thing really was to make it stable and give it some bylaws, have a way of handing over, have a way of setting up the tests and things. But it was always our intention to also have a sort of more sort of cinematography type group where that was invitation only, and we're about to go to press. So this is groundbreaking news. We're about to go to press with
breaking news.
Breaking news. Yeah.
Sting.
Yeah.
Have we got a sting for that? No.
I haven't got a sting for it. I need a little countdown or something.
Well, that's sort of good. Yeah.
This was part of my scary things, code going through and not completing. So the announcement is Colorist Society Hollywood, which is not like the other chapters, a purely local chapter, but is an invitation-only group of the more select colorists that work on the A-list movies. So it's kind of mostly focused around cinema at the moment, and they will be, and they are mostly based in Los Angeles. And so they will be able to kind of directly communicate with the ASC and AMPAS and all the various organizations that are there. They're not strictly speaking limited to Los Angeles. So at some point that may expand, but it's something that a lot of people in the early days caused them not to want to join the Colorist Society because they felt that the level of entry was too wide. And this is our sort of elite echelon at the top for those that are in that category that want to have a sort of a slightly different separator. And why that's good for the rest of the society is that those people are, first of all, in usually influential positions, and also they are in a position to really sort of set an example and to give working practices. We were talking about how the industry has changed, moving towards finishing. My job has changed because I'm now working more and more early in the pipeline, talking to cinematographers at the time of doing camera tests and things. And so they're in a position to really document, influence, and set examples for those new workflows. So it's really, really exciting.
And let's go again. So joining the Hollywood chapter, you obviously have to be a Colorist Society member to start with, and then you get invited into the chapter? Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So there's a board which will be announced, and yeah, so you join Colorist Society, and in a kind of a similar way to the way the fellowships work. But obviously the fellowships are limited based on the total size of the Colorist Society. The Colorist Society Hollywood chapter is not really limited in terms of the number of people that they can invite, but the invitations have to come from the existing members. So so they would appoint people that they know have worked on movies or that they've come across. So it's a much more select group in that sense.
Good. So it's very similar to, I suppose, the chapters that we do have around the world, in that we, in Australia and New Zealand, invite people. Like, we've got probably 20 people, like a hardcore chapter group. If there's someone out of the group who's doing good work and we notice it, we will go to them and say, hey, look, you should think about joining up to the CSI Australia and New Zealand chapter, welcome them on board. Sometimes, it might take a bit of encouragement, but the thing is getting a bit of traction. So people now are coming to ask us, and we say, well, yeah, you have to be in grading for at least 3 years and ideally have some IMDb credits, and you have to need references, 2 references from 2 other colorists that can vouch for your work. That's standard, and that is all on the CS website. So go there if you're interested, but you can always reach out to Kevin about it, or to anyone
Sure.
at Colorist
And I would
Society with any
say
questions.
too, we've kind of introduced a new way of doing the application. So you still need to go to colorstsociety.com and click on the join us link and fill out the form there. That's for the records in the database. But the key way of vetting people into the society is to have 2 references. And those 2 references, if you don't know anybody in the society, you can use employers and clients to establish that you've been a full-time colorist for a minimum of 3 years, and that you have a reputation in the industry. IMDb helps. But in order to streamline that process, if you are picked up by the chapter, so if, for example, you join the or you want to join the Australian and New Zealand chapter, the officers of the chapter can put you forward, and then that will sort of fast track the application, because we don't then have to go chasing for references. So not just the Australian, New Zealand chapter, but any of the chapters, once you go to the meetings and the officers recognize that you should be in the Colorist Society and that you're well qualified, they can fast track you by putting you forward.
Great. Excellent, mate. So what was your scariest moment in a grading suite through your career?
There's been a few, but the one that I mostly remember was back in the telecine days. And when I started out, I was working on Bosch telecines that are now DFT, the German ones. But I had them at a time when everybody else was using the Sintel scanners, and there was a particular thing on the array that if you did, what you used to do is you used to have to do an FPN, which was to take a picture of the scan. So if there was any dust or something on the scanner, it would basically kind of treat it as a dead pixel and replace it. Now, the problem was that if after you had done that scan, that piece of dust moved, then instead of a sort of a transparent pixel, you got a black pixel, and that, because it was a linear scanner, that created a line down the film. And I was doing one of my very earliest but quite influential commercials, and I went off to clean the roll of film, because we used to grade it, take it over to the film cleaner, clean it, and then transfer it so that it had the, it was as clean as you could get it. And so while I was off taking this roll to clean, I put the next one up to rewind it so that we could go through and grade it and get it all looking good. Well, I just got this roll of film laced up on the film cleaner when the producer came rushing in to the room, which was supposed to be a secure room, but it was banging on the door, screaming at me. And he said, you know, your telecine is scratching all my film. Your telecine is scratching all my film. And I thought, oh, no. I mean, we used to do, it's the worst feeling because obviously on a big commercial, you know, they've got to reshoot everything. I mean, there was no digital fixes in those days. And my heart just sank, you know, and I sort of ran back to the telecine room. And it was one of the nice things about those Bosch telecines was that when you sort of wind fast through the film, it still showed pictures. And sure enough, you could see this kind of wiggly scratch line going all the way through the reel. And so I stopped the telecine as quickly as possible and, you know, had a look at the film. And then I started to feel a little bit of relief because I couldn't see any damage to the film. And I certainly couldn't see anything. I mean, we used to scrub clean those rollers before every job. I mean, 2 or 3 days. In fact, when I had an assistant, the first thing the assistant had to learn was how to clean these rollers. You know, that was how scary it was. And I thought, oh, you know, I know what this is. And I sort of breathed a sigh of relief. And I then made the most serious mistake of my career ever. I kind of opened the door back into the client room with a smile on my face, you know, feeling pretty happy. And of course, they're still panicking, like, what are we going to do with this roller scratch film? And I said, don't worry. And they were sort of, why are you taking this so lightly? And I said, your film is not scratched, you know. They said, no, we saw it scratched. And so I had to go through the whole process. I mean, it was quite painful because I had to put up the film, play it for them again to show them there were no scratches. They wanted to see the whole roll again. And then it had to be prepared for cleaning. So that meant that the whole thing went through the machine more times than I would have liked. But I had to absolutely convince them that, you know, this was just a digital problem, not a physical problem. And of course, this was unusual for them because there were very few. I think there was only like 2 of these digital scanners in London. Everybody else was using the cathode ray tubes, the Syntel machines, where that couldn't possibly happen. You know, if you've got a piece of dust on the tube, it looked like a piece of dust with a bit of a shadow behind it and stuff like that. But yeah, that was so scary because I mean, I thought my career had ended. You know, that sort of cold sweat when I was sitting there in front of the machine.
Yeah, I've got a couple of similar stories. One when I was, before I started in post, I was a projectionist. We used to show films. And there was one time where we had a pretty big press screening and I'd laced up the film, but I hadn't shut the door properly on the projector. Looked around and the film was billowing out of the projector onto the floor around my feet. So you got to pick up the film pretty quickly, trying to wind it on a bobbin. It's all coming out the machine. It's chaos out the back, but hopefully out the front, they have no idea of this panic going on with all their films on the floor. That happened a few times. The grading one, I may have told this on the Colour Tour podcast. A friend of mine, Aidan Farrell, I used to work with a Molyneux, then went on to work at the farm, did a lot of top music videos. Their machine broke down and he was sick. He couldn't do this job. So we inherited this music video and the film, and it came up to where I was working. And the session was really hard. It was one of those sessions where, Aidan doesn't quite do it like that. Okay. What about this? Aidan does something like this. It was really difficult, right? I was trying to get these looks and it was a lot of looking around and huffing and puffing. This is not going well. And I was saving some stills, and then I mistakenly cut a still store up of 2 elephants making love from the still store. Don't ask me why I had that picture on the still store. It's from Nate. We did a lot of wildlife. Anyway, that didn't go down well. This was like the session that you just wanted to run out of because it just wasn't going anywhere. But then for some reason, I got a call from reception. My wife was on the phone, said my little 1-year-old lad had eaten a poisonous plant and they were going in an ambulance to hospital. So I literally said, sorry, I've got to leave. And I just got up and walked out of the room, and the director was going, oh, what's going on? What's going to happen to my job? And I was gone. It was almost like I'd got a calling from above that got me out of this nightmare scenario.
Did you ever work with them again?
No, it didn't. It was. I don't think they would have been called. But that sometimes that happens, doesn't it? You just don't gel that well with a person for whatever reason. And I don't know whether it's sometimes you get off to a bad start, but not everybody can get on with everybody. And I say that a lot to people when they're starting out. You're not going to work with all clients. Just personality wise, you maybe don't click with that person. And I found that generally around, and that could be with anything, why DPs work with certain directors and why they don't. So that would be what would be your best moment, Kevin, your highlight? Is it like a show or a film or something you worked on, you went, that's my standout?
Certainly one of my most memorable moments, because it was a bit of a sort of on my bucket list really of things to do. It was the film was 180 as an Indian movie, and I'd always wanted to work on what I thought of as a Bollywood movie, but this actually wasn't. I learned that there's actually 3 markets in India, not one. So this wasn't strictly speaking Bollywood, but it was an Indian movie. It was a big movie. It was the first fully digital movie in the country, and it was a funny story about how I even got the job, because there were a lot of international colorists working in India at that time, but they were usually there for a period of a year, so they were usually under contract or something like that.
When are we talking? 2010, that sort of time, or before, early DI?
Oh God, no. It was. It would have. I think it was a little later than that, but it was early DI.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, and India switched to digital reluctantly in many ways, because their workflow with film was unique to everywhere else in the world. They skipped the intermediate process. They went straight from negative to release print, which made their cinema releases, I mean, unbelievably crisp and sharp. It was a fantastic way of doing it. But of course, extremely problematic, because they trashed the negative in the process. So they really didn't have proper archival as a result. Anyway, this job was interesting because it came to me from 3 different directions. I got a call from the director, I got a call from the DIT, and I got a call from one of the producers, because a large part of the funding came from Cube, who owned I think they owned half the digital cinemas in India.
Yeah.
And they all phoned me sort of without knowing that somebody else had already spoken to me about the job, and it it sort of dawned on me on the second phone call that I should say, oh, is this the same job as so and so's talking about? And they said, oh yeah. And it started off really difficult, because the brief was to create a film print and a DCP, a digital master, that was identical. And at that time, we didn't have the sort of color management that we have today. So this was really sort of not breaking ground, because I knew how to do it, but it was not an easy process. Because in order to make it happen, you would have to have basically a grading LUT that matched the film process, and that could only really be created by putting test film through the lab, and it was a very slow and painstaking business to do that in those days. Nowadays, we can easily kind of match the film to the digital copy, but in those days, the only way to do it was to match the digital to the film. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, it was a great looking movie, and a fantastic DP to work with, and I was there for about a month. The first week I really spent on getting the calibration nailed down and making sure that was all good. And it was just a joy to work on this movie. And what really made it memorable at the end was that after a fairly short period, I said, we need to run some cinema tests. And towards the end of the movie, when we were sort of making trailers and things, I said, we really need to see this in the cinema before we send it to anybody. We need to see the print version and make sure it matches the digital version that we're grading. And so the director said, okay, I can set that up. The big theater is like 1,000-seater cinema, huge cinema, was just 10-20 minutes down the road, and that was where the premiere was going to be held. And he said, I can get that for tomorrow. Would you be able to come over and take some time out of the grade to come to this theater and to see it? So I said, yeah, sure. And I didn't think any more about it. And I came in to work the next day, t-shirt and jeans, because it's hot and I'm in a dark room, nobody's ever going to see me. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, in walks one of the two lead actresses, completely dressed up to the nines, full makeup, the whole bit. I thought my first reaction was she must have been out clubbing all night or something like that, And she said, oh, are you Kevin? And I said, yeah, have you come to see some scenes? Do you want to see what you look like? And she said, no, we haven't got time for that. I'm here to pick you up. We have to go over to the theater. So I said, oh, the screening. Yeah, of course. Okay. And I, out we went into a waiting, one of those Indian taxis, based on the 1950s cars. So we got into one of those and off we go to the theater. And when I get close to the theater, there's this huge crowd outside and the red carpet's out, the whole bit. And she walks me up the red carpet in my sort of scruffy dressed attire. She escorts me into the theater, past the press. There were about 200 press there. And I didn't know about this, but in India, what they do on these big releases is they have a screening of the trailer and they do live music from the movie, because they release the soundtrack first. And so all of the crew were there, all of the cast were there as well. And I get escorted past all the press up this red carpet with this actress. And it doesn't stop there. We listen to the music, we see the trailer, and then the director gets up on stage and starts talking about the movie. That was all in a language that I couldn't understand. And then the lead actor goes up, and then the actresses go up, and then the DP goes up. And I have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm just about to sort of nod off to sleep, and I hear my name called out. And there's the guy behind me is kind of prodding me and saying, you have to go up on stage now. And so I had to make a short presentation about why I was there and what I'd done on the movie in front of this enormous cinema. I mean, it's the biggest cinema I've ever been in my life. So yeah, that's my story.
It was the finished movie. So it was all done then. It was like
no. This was not the full premiere. This was just
a test.
Well, it wasn't for me. It was supposed to be a test, but for them, it was the release of the record, because they always release the soundtrack before the movie.
Right.
And if the soundtrack does well, then the movie does well. And they were screening the trailer for the first time, and that was the big press coverage. And we made the front page of the Indian Times or the Chennai Times or whatever it was. And it was a huge, big deal. So yeah, that one stands out.
How did it look? Were you hiding behind a cushion when you were watching it?
No, I mean, the DP was amazing. It was one of those jobs where,
yeah.
I mean, I did do a lot, because it was the first time it wasn't the first time he'd done a digital grading, but it was the first time he'd really used it. I showed him a couple of tricks and he said, we want to do that and it was pretty much every shot, so I was, so we did work quite hard on it, but every day the DP came in and we worked really, really close together. And I still love the look of the movie. Sadly, the story didn't hold up. So in the reviews, they were generally along the lines of fantastic looking movie, but shame about the plot, which made me feel
Yeah.
pretty good. But of course, I would have loved it to
Yeah.
be more popular.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a lot of those situations where I'm grading on a monitor, run both theatre, I'm grading on a monitor, and they say, yeah, we're handling all the DCP and we're doing everything, and you want to come along and watch it? And I'm thinking, I've no idea what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you rock up there sometimes thinking, I've no idea how this is going to look. But having said that, 9 times out of 10, when I've gone to a screening, it always seems to be, I think, better than I remember it. Or they've done good conversions, because that whole process has got so much easier than it used to be. If you've got the good DCP and it does the good conversions of your color spaces and gammas, it looks pretty good. There's a few things you will notice as a difference, but overall, I've always been pleasantly surprised of the scenes I was dreading coming up when I'm sitting there in the premiere. I go, oh, that doesn't look too bad. Not as bad as I remember it.
There's a
Advice
question
for
in the
young
chat.
colorists.
Sorry.
Oh, great. Gigi, what is it? Yeah, good.
There's a question in the chat, Kevin. Can you remember what the Indian film was from our audience in India?
Yeah, the movie's called 180, and it's actually available. The whole movie is pretty much available on YouTube, I believe. I think you can watch the whole movie on YouTube. It's a nice movie, and it had a bit of a twist to it, so it's worth a watch. It's definitely worth a watch for free. Jay Endra was the director.
Don't look
Kevin, your
behind you. You've
assistant's
got an assassin.
Your assistant's got a few questions for you.
Yeah,
He
he's
probably needs to.
he's
not
just
Billy.
inherited 2 swords, and he's very keen to test out the scissor movement that removes my head.
Fantastic. We will go wait for that.
Bit of
So,
Edward Scissorhands.
advice to young colorists, because it can be scary. Yeah, you sit in or you move slightly up, or you take on a job with maybe a bigger director. It's scary times. You do get nervous, and you think, oh, I should have stuck just grading what I was doing, or I can't be a colorist. I should have stuck being an editor. So my advice, if you get any chance, you've got to take it, because the chances don't come along. And this is what Walter Volpato said to me when chatting on the Color Tour podcast. He got a lucky break, right place, right time, did the movie. Not always pretty in the sessions, but you get through that, you get some runs on the board, then you build from there, and someone notices you and goes, oh, I like that. I'll have Walter for my next job. And that's how it's got to be. But that will be a nervous time. That will be hard. You might well make mistakes, but if you get a chance, you've got to try and seize that opportunity. That would be one of my big tips, if you can.
It's great advice. And, a number of people that have done extremely well in the industry have got started exactly that way, by taking on a job that perhaps was a bit ambitious for them. And then often what happens is either that job goes viral and everybody wants to know who graded it, or more often what happens is you set up a relationship with the DP or the director, or sometimes even the producer. But you set up a relationship and they want to come back, they want to come back, they want to come back. And those can happen no matter how much experience and no matter how busy you are. Those things happen all the time. And it's really worth doing it. And of course, just prep, prep. Just try and get as much information, try and have as much conversation before the session, so that you're in as strong a position as you possibly can. Sorry, my assistant just checking me up there.
Yeah, good. Now, if anyone wants training, Kevin, do you know anywhere they can go?
I've heard that this Australian bloke's got a lot of stuff about Resolve on FX PhD, and then there's the best training program on the planet is with iColorist.com, the International Colorist
Yeah.
Academy.
There you go.
They've got a bunch of courses which they do both in person and on the internet. Strange enough, there's this wonderful way of doing it nowadays. Oh, hang on, we're
Yeah.
on it. We're on Zoom. There we go.
There we are.
Yeah, so check
Yeah,
out
so-
iColorist.com.
Yeah, we've really revamped the website during this year, taking the time where we're obviously not traveling. We hope that classroom stuff will come back, because that we firmly believe that's the best way to learn anything. And you're getting together and networking and going out, socializing with people, like-minded, creative people. So that's the plan. That will be a slow burn. Meanwhile, we'll still do things on Zoom, still do this, and Color Space Cadets, which is actually next Thursday. We'll be talking about the shows you should be looking at, the HDR shows you should be looking at, ones we like, just as good references, really. And it's a really relaxed. You think this is relaxed? Color Space Cadets, we're really spaced out for that one.